Welcome to another episode of Erik Wait Whiskey Studies, and in this video I'm going to give you 10 reasons why I joined the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. The Scotch Malt Whisky Society was founded in 1983 by a group of friends including tax accountant Philip "Pip" Hills, actor Russell Hunter, contractor David Allison, writer W. Gordon Smith, and architect Ben Tyndall. Pip Hills was already an avid whiskey enthusiast and traveled around Scotland visiting distilleries. The group of friends purchased a cask of Glenfarclas from which they would occasionally draw bottles and share. In 1983, part of the vault's buildings in Leith became available as previous occupants J.G. Thompson had been relocated to Glasgow by owner Tennant Caledonian Breweries. A membership society was established, and the cask of Glenfarclas, owned by Hills and his cohorts, a 1975 sherry cask, was released as the first Scotch Malt Whisky Society bottling, labeled 1.1, in August 1983. Further bottlings were released monthly thereafter until the society started to grow in size. In 1995, Hills resigned as a director, and it continued as a private company without him. In 1996, the following year, the Scotch Malt Whisky Society offered its members a private share scheme, and the money raised was reinvested into the acquisition of a second members club at Greville Street in London. In 2004, the Scotch Malt Whisky Society opened its third venue at 28 Queen Street in Edinburgh and was sold later the same year to Glenmorangie. In 2008, to mark its 25th anniversary, the Scotch Malt Whisky Society updated its livery quite dramatically for the first time in its history, with a change to the bottle shape and slight alterations to the label to include a more extensive tasting note. The bottles were updated again in 2017 to better highlight the whiskey styles. In 2015, the Scotch Malt Whisky Society was sold to a private consortium of investors. Today, the Scotch Malt Whisky Society is an international club made up of nearly 30,000 members from around the world. So I first got introduced to the Scotch Malt Whisky Society when I visited Scotland back in 2018. Hooked up with Roy from Aquavitae, and he showed me around the Scotch Malt Whisky Society vault, and there I got my first introduction. But I've tasted whiskeys from Scotch Malt Whisky Society at other events, such as the Scotch Test Dummies 5th anniversary, met up with Ben Dietrich, and I've always liked the whiskeys, but it wasn't until recently that I decided, you know what, I'm gonna pull the trigger and join the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. Now, some of the reasons why I joined the Scotch Malt Whisky Society might be unique to me as a whiskey tuber or a student of whiskey, but I think some of these you're gonna find in common as well. Number 10 is that the whiskeys, generally speaking, tend to be cask strength. Now, I don't like anemic whiskeys at around 40 ABV. 46 is my bare minimum, generally what I prefer. But I like cask strength with whiskeys. Not that necessarily I'm going to drink them at that high ABV, but it gives you some room to play around, adding a little bit of water, a little bit more, perhaps a little bit more, so that you can adjust, or I can adjust the whiskey to the level at which I want. And the reality is, if you've ever had, say, a Lafroig cask strength versus a Lafroig 10, at the regular ABV, going from the cask strength to the normal bottling strength, it's not just a matter of intensity and flavor and aromas. Something gets lost in the process as well. Or if you've had, say, the Bunnahabhain 12 and the Bunnahabhain 12 cask strength, they really do have a different profile. In the process of bringing it down to bottle strength, whether it's 46, 50, or whatever, most bottles lose something in the process. So I like to have a whiskey that I can take it down a little bit at a time to the level which I'm comfortable with it, and maintain as much as possible of those aromas and flavors that I'm looking for in a whiskey. The ninth reason why I joined the Scotch Malt Whisky Society is the whiskey is non-chill filtered and has natural color. There is no good reason to put E150 caramel coloring into a whiskey. It doesn't add anything to the flavor, and we don't really care that much about coloring. You know, it's totally unnecessary. The whiskey fan will get accustomed to bottle variation, and if your bottles are dark, as these are, they're solid green, or actually clear green, or as Ardbeg makes their green, a lot of other distilleries, then you're not going to notice the difference from just looking at the bottle. And non-chill filtered, let's get real, right? If the whiskey's at 46% alcohol by volume or above, you don't need to chill filter your whiskeys. You lose a lot of flavor, or have the potential to lose a lot of flavor when you are filtering a whiskey. Particle filtering, you know, perhaps to remove little parts of a cask that might be floating around, that's one thing. But chill filtering, you lose the oils and you just lose a lot in the flavor. So we like our whiskeys with all the flavor that our money is paying for. And the Scotch Malt Whisky Society doesn't add coloring or do any called chilled filtering. The 8th reason why I joined the Scotch Malt Whisky Society is I don't live in Scotland. I've been to Scotland twice thus far, in 2018 and 2019. And as an American, going to Scotland, one of the first things you notice, one, whiskey shops are like Starbucks in California. They're everywhere. And you'll be surprised at how many bottles you never heard of, you never seen, or when you visit distilleries, how many are not released to the general public. So, if you're living in Scotland, you've got so much that you can choose from. The difficulty of going to Scotland is not trying to find bottles that are rare enough or hard enough to find enough to bring home. The challenge is you only have so much luggage. You can only carry so much. There's just an ocean of whiskey available in Scotland that isn't available anywhere else. And unfortunately, I don't live in Scotland. So the next best thing is, if you can't go to Scotland, bring Scotland to you through the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. The 7th reason why I joined the Scotch Malt Whisky Society is to gain access to inaccessible whiskeys. Now, the Scotch Malt Whisky Society doesn't tell you the name of the distilleries on the bottle. However, if you get a copy of the codes, I have a copy of that on my Facebook group, and you can find it online. Just look at the distillery numbers, distillery codes, and you'll know what distilleries are being sold when they're available. As a student of whiskey, I want to have eventually a whiskey from every distillery at my house. You will notice if you watch, say, the live streams, or you just look online on the website, you'll notice distillery releases that, one, I never see them, period, here in the United States. And then secondly, a lot of them that I don't think they even bottle their own bottles. The only way you're gonna get access to those whiskeys from certain distilleries is if you get them from an independent bottler. And one of the best to get them from is the Scotch Malt Whisky Society, because not only are you getting a bottle straight from the distillery, or straight from a cask from the distillery that's non-chill filtered, doesn't have any color added to it, but it's going to be those rare and hard to find whiskeys, those unique experiences. So for my channel, eventually there are certain distilleries I'm going to want to do a video on, and so I'm going to need access to those whiskeys, and the only place I know of for some of those distilleries is the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. The 6th reason why I joined the Scotch Malt Whisky Society is the rising costs of whiskeys. Now, I see people in the chats during the live streams or in the comment section of Scotch Malt Whisky Society videos comment about the prices of the whiskeys. If you think they're too expensive, do this. Search out cask strength, non-chill filtered whiskeys from your favorite distilleries that also are available through the Scotch Malt Whisky Society, and compare the prices. I dare you to do it. I challenge you to do it. Compare the prices. Because the reality is, you're gonna pay as much or more for bottles from these distilleries at 46%, 52%, but hardly are you ever gonna find them at cask strength. So in terms of price value, yes, they tend to be over $100 or so, but for cask strength and for age statement whiskeys, this one here is a 12-year-old. This one here is an 11-year-old. This one here is a 14-year-old. A lot of times what you're gonna find is, even if they are cask strength from distilleries, they don't have age statements. We're living in an age of the non-age statement bottles, but all of these from Scotch Malt Whisky Society, these are all age statement whiskeys. My fifth reason for joining the Scotch Malt Whisky Society is they have more bottles available than other independent bottlers that can be sent to my home. So there are other independent bottlers of Scotch whiskey, and perhaps where you live, you have more available. I'm in California in the United States. A lot of these independent bottlers, I can't find them in the United States, and if they are online, I can't get them sent to my house. There is a Scotch Malt Whisky Society of North America, or of America, that have their own bottles, separate from the UK, that I can have sent to my home. Independent bottles, at least here in California, of Scotch whiskey are harder to come by. So my fifth reason for joining the Scotch Malt Whisky Society is more accessibility through an independent bottler. My fourth reason for joining the Scotch Malt Whisky Society is many of my fellow whiskey tubers have joined the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. Now, I say that not because, hey, I want to be part of a club or part of a group or follow a trend or be part of an inside crowd along with fellow Scotch whiskey reviewers such as the Scotch for Dummies, Scotch Test Dummies, Daniel Whittington, and many others. It's because, look, just like other viewers of whiskey tubers, a lot of times I make purchases based on the opinions and views of my fellow whiskey tubers, right? I'm a watcher as well as a whiskey tuber, and I go, I want to get that bottle. Well, when I noticed that a lot of my friends, colleagues in the whiskey tuber community were joining the Scotch Malt Whisky Society, you know what? They're not idiots. They know what they're doing. They know good whiskey when they can find it, and so I joined. And having already been to several Scotch Malt Whisky Society tastings, having visited a vault over in Scotland, it's about time I joined my fellow friends in really experiencing what the Scotch Malt Whisky Society has to offer. And my number three reason for joining the Scotch Malt Whisky Society is it's a constant exploration of whiskey. One of the challenges, one of the uniqueness of the Scotch Malt Whisky Society is, they don't tell you what the distillery is because the focus isn't on the distillery but on that particular cask. So they give these little whimsical names to it, but because they're cask strength and they tend to be limited in how many casks, perhaps even just one cask, once they're gone, they're gone. So these whiskeys are about exploration of a particular cask, not necessarily a particular distillery, although of course you're going to know what distillery it is when you look it up. But it's a unique moment by moment, bottle by bottle experience in which you've had that experience from that particular bottle, the experience is over, and now you move on. It's a constant journey of exploration rather than, you may have other distilleries, other bottles from other distilleries, which I've got here, that you have those go back tos. You've had it before and you want to buy it again. You've had it before and you buy it again, and you get, bottle after bottle of that particular bottling from that particular distillery, say the Ardbeg 10, Elijah Craig, barrel proof, whatever, and you go back to them over and over and over again. Well, this is very, very different in terms of their focus. The focus is on individual, unique experiences, bottle per bottle. But I gotta tell you, everything I've tasted has been absolutely fantastic. Now, they color code the bottles, and you probably know this if you watch the videos of the Scotch Malt Whisky Society in terms of how they categorize by flavor profiles, and then they color the bottles accordingly. Me personally, I tend towards sherry cask. I love the sherry cask. I love a sherry peated cask, and I love peated whiskeys, but I found the others to be just as nice as well and ready for different occasions. These are great whiskeys. I gotta tell you, these are great whiskeys. Neat. They're great on ice. Yes, I like them a little cooler here in sunny California. But I'm also finding some of these I did an open and tasted during a live stream with Scotch Test Dummies, now Scotch Malt Whisky Society, and some of these are about half empty, some are about a third empty, and they've just gotten better and better and better, and I've enjoyed them more and more as I go through these. But number two reason for joining the Scotch Malt Whisky Society is a lot of the bottles are better than distillery releases. How many times have you had a bottle from a distillery and then had a bottle from an independent bottler and you go, wow, this independent bottler is better than anything you can get from the actual distillery. And you go, why? Don't these distilleries release them at cask strength, release them non-chill filtered with no added coloring with a age statement on them? Why don't they do that? Why do I have to go through an independent bottler in order to get these great whiskeys? Well, I gotta tell you, there are several, which I shall not name by name, bottles that I've had from the Scotch Malt Whisky Society, or tastings or samples from the Scotch Malt Whisky Society that were far better than anything I had from that distillery. In fact, some of these distilleries, on their own, their official releases, I've not been all that thrilled with, but then absolutely loved what I tasted from the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. And my number one reason for joining the Scotch Malt Whisky Society is they are freaking fantastic. While some bottles are better than others, I've never been disappointed by anything I've tasted from the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. And some of these have been so mind-blowing fantastic, I've actually been saddened that, there's only, 300, 400, 500, whatever bottles of it, and you can't get another one. Alrighty, so those are my 10 reasons for joining the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. If you're a member of the Scotch Malt Whisky Society and you have additional reasons why to join, put it in the comment section down below. If you have any comments, if you have any questions, leave them down below. If you're hesitating, you've been thinking about it, you've been riding the fence about whether or not you want to join, then my recommendation is find someone else who is a member, find someone who is a member, and perhaps see what they got to offer, see what they got to taste. And if you have an opportunity to go to a tasting for the Scotch Malt Whisky Society, I highly recommend it. You won't regret it. All right, that's it for this video. And if you haven't already, give this video a thumbs up. If you haven't joined and you like watching my videos, subscribe and ring the bell so you'll be notified next time I go live or post a new video. And if you haven't already, you want to check these videos out here that I'm going to put right here in here, and check these out for more content. All right, Sanjiva. Hey, don't forget to subscribe and check out these other whiskey videos.